Let's get you more on that story. A recent surge in gang violence and murders in the Cape Flats has once more thrust the safety of children into the spotlight. Among people who were murdered in less than a week, the body of a teenage girl was found at a dumping site at the weekend. And according to children's rights organization Molosongololo, crime statistics for 2017 and 2018 revealed that close to 1,000 children have been murdered in the country. Newzroom Afrika reporter Nasiphi Same joins us live from Strand for more on this. This is rather a worrying trend. Interventions that you are hearing from the community that they want include what, Nasiphi?
Well, Dudu, from the interventions that we have heard from CPF, including Justice Forum Executive Director, is that the CPF is calling for government to rather institute or implement a state of emergency, which will see more police deployment, including the SANDF, which is what we saw in 2019 in various communities in the Cape Flats, particularly 10 precincts that were deemed as crime hotspot and gang-infested areas. However, you know, the recent guest that we had, Lorenzo Davis, saying that we do not need more police force and security forces on the ground. However, we do need ministers and departments such as the trade and industry, small development, including social development, on the ground, interacting with these communities that are plagued by the various social ills that ultimately result in crime and gangsterism, which is what we've seen playing out in Manenberg and in Khayelitsha, where in Manenberg, in just a space of 3 days, 8 people were left dead. In Khayelitsha on Monday morning, the community there waking up to a gruesome discovery of 5 people that have been left dead. And as you mentioned, that 16-year-old teenage girl that was found dumped at a dumping site this past weekend in Browns Farm. But to talk to us about, you know, or rather bringing in a different element to this crime that is happening in the Western Cape, I'm joined here by Patrick Solomons, the director of Molosongololo. You know, what we've been seeing the past week with the murders that we've been seeing and also the stats that are being released, you know, what is it communicating, particularly on the most vulnerable, which is children?
Well, basically, it once again sort of highlights how unsafe the lives of our children are, particularly the lives of children on the Cape Flats. They live in very, very violent communities, that their homes are not safe, their environment is not safe, and or even their schools. Just on Monday, for example, my colleagues at a Monday staff meeting reported about all the violence that their children have experienced, their schools have experienced. From Atlantis, for example, we had reports that there's been outbreaks there of violence, gang-related violence in Atlantis. In Lavender Hill, there's been outbreaks of violence. In Bishop Lavis, we had stories. In Hanover Park, we've had some stories. Manenberg, of course, now the killings there that we've just witnessed. And then, of course, the horrible killings in Khayelitsha as well. And there's been also other reports. On Saturday, we couldn't have some children at our programs because of violence that they have been exposed to in their communities. So this really affects all of us. And I think the problem that we have is that we are not really addressing the systemic violence that is happening in our communities. That we have had reports that children as young as 7 years of age are being recruited into gangs, to be gangs. So there's something terribly wrong, that the gangs or these kind of phenomenon that is happening on the Cape Flats, where groups of men and groups of people are organizing themselves and using violence to claim their territories, to claim their business, for example, and also to claim people, basically. And then children live in these violent situations. How is it possible for a 3-year-old to be shot 5 times, for example, right? Apparently in a hail of bullets. But this is just how serious it is. And we don't see the people who really can begin to do something really, really constructive about it being on the forefront of fighting this crime. It is not just a police matter. The communities are already beginning to organize themselves and standing up, but they need the support of government at all levels to support them. And I think that is really, really what we need. And then, of course, also our prosecuting authorities and our investigation authorities, they are failing us. Crimes are not properly investigated. Criminals are being let off on bail. Criminals don't get, they're in court, and victims don't see justice being done. So that is something that we really, really need to look at. And I think the Minister of Police has offered that at every police station, for example, when it comes to sexual offences, there's going to be these special gender-based violence deaths at least by the end of this month. We'll have to wait and see what's going to happen with that. But crime is really out of hand, and we really need something to do about that.
On that note, Patrick, you said, or rather Molosongololo has announced, or when we last spoke last year, you said between 2018 and 19, 1,000 children murdered in the Western Cape. Western Cape is a province that has been flagged as an unsafe province to have children. Can you talk to us about perhaps maybe the recent stats and what that also communicates?
Yeah, there's already over 1,000 children that's been killed last year. So that is really a very, very high number. We also know that there's over 300 cases of children who died last year that is unresolved. That is, the investigations are still going on. So parents don't know what's happening. We don't know if those cases are in court, whether perpetrators have been arrested, or what's the situation. But that's a very, very high number of murder cases. Children who most likely were in fatal stabbings, fatal shootings, accidents, or whatever it might be. But that's a very high number, and that also reflects the problem that we have around investigations and apprehending of offenders. And that is something that we really, really need to look at. There appears to be no sort of consequence for people who are violent, people who assault, people who commit murder. And I think that is part of the problem that we have, because we're not acting decisively, we're not bringing them to book, and then also they out in a few years' time committing again another murder or more, and that is basically what we're experiencing. Community members can identify who killed their children, but unfortunately police are unable to arrest them, charge them, and then and the prosecutors prosecute these murderers. And that is part of the problem that we are sitting with. What we have seen also just recently in the response to last year's flare-up of violence that we've had in Manenberg, that communities organize themselves, and we need to see more of those things, where the community take a responsibility to create safe spaces, whether it's at school, or the streets, at the shops, wherever it is in the community, and that is what we need more of. But we need the support of government and municipalities to come forward.
Thank you so much. Patrick Solomon's there. Dudu will just show you and the viewers a wall of remembrance here at Molosongololo. Some of the children that have been put up here that have either, died by shooting or being found somewhere after have been missing. And basically, Patrick talking about the toddler from Bishop Lavis a couple of weeks ago that was playing in front of their home and was caught in a crossfire and ultimately, was wounded by 5 bullets. We do understand that the toddler is, recovering in hospital. However, these are just some of the families of these children here in the Western Cape that have had to pick up the pieces due to violence and gang violence that has ultimately seen lives of children, being taken away at such a tender age. And hearing from Patrick here that between 2018 and 2019, 1,000 children in the Western Cape murdered, and those gruesome or rather grim statistics that indicated in 2019 that the Western Cape was indeed an unsafe province for children is also something that is very concerning, taking into account what is currently playing out in various streets in the Cape Flats, where a surge of gang violence throughout the day at odd times. You find children being caught in a crossfire. Hearing Patrick also speaking about the fact that there were children that could not attend a program this past weekend because of the violence in their communities.
A very worrisome trend. Future generations being wiped out senselessly. Nasiphi Same, thank you very much for that story.